It was a bright and sunny day on the island of Sodor. A massive project was launched to build a brand new station at the harbor. The massive influx of tourists has made the island busier than ever. With all the work having to be done, the Fat Controller had made arrangements for another engine to help out with the work. The Fat Controller addressed the engines in the shed later that night. So far, there's been a massive undertaking to build this new station, said the Fat Controller. Therefore, I've decided to get another engine to help. I am giving him a trial. Please make him feel welcome. Anyways, continue with your work as usual. That's all for now. The engines all wondered what the new one would be like. New engine. I hope he works hard, said Thomas. Better not be a smelly old diesel. Then we'll have more problems, said Gordon. I've met him already, said James. All the other engines turned their attention to him. He's a big austerity freight engine, and he's, well, a bit odd. Odd? All the engines thought in question. How so, James? Asked Edward. Well, I took coaches of workmen to the harbor this morning, and I said hello to him, and he just looked at me and looked away before mumbling hello. Maybe he's shy, James, said Edward. I'm sure he'll come around. Sounds like a basket case to me, said Henry. The next morning, Edward pulled a long train of timber to the work site of the new station. He suddenly heard an unfamiliar whistle, and a large tender engine puffed around the corner, a line of box vans in tow. The big engine screeched to a halt nearby the work site. Hello there. You must be the new engine. My name's Edward. What's yours? The engine looked sadly at Edward and said, Jericho. Well then, Jericho, how are you liking our island? Jericho didn't respond right away, but muttered down at his buffers. It's all right. Suddenly, Cranky the Crane accidentally dropped a load of lumber onto the ground, making a loud crashing noise. And then suddenly, a tramper's whistle blew long and loudly. Edward and the workmen jumped, but Jericho froze in absolute shock and looked as if he was about to cry. He panicked and quickly puffed away. As he did, Edward thought he could hear him muttering his own name over and over and over again. Edward was quite confused. He knew the sound made everyone jump, but Jericho looked absolutely terrified. James was right, he thought. He is a little odd. As the work went on, the other engines began to notice the odd behavior of Jericho. Whenever loud noises happened, he would frightfully puff away. Some days it rained and he refused to leave the sheds. And even more bizarre, he would stare at the buffers that faced the sea and silently cry to himself. All the other engines thought this was extremely unusual. He's a right nutter, said Gordon. He's the biggest scaredy cat I've ever seen, said Henry. How did the Fat Controller ever think he would be useful? He's a big, dumb box of bolts, said James. He makes Henry look less like a coward in the rain, chuckled Thomas, as Henry rolled his eyes. Stow it, all of you, said Edward. His behavior may be strange, but I have a feeling I know why that is. Pah! Edward, not everyone you encounter can be charmed by your good nature, said Gordon. I tried talking to him, and all he did was snap at me. He is not one to be reasoned with, said Gordon. I'll find that out for myself, old boy, replied Edward. On a dark, stormy day, Edward brought a line of empty trucks to the worksite. In a siding in a shed sat Jericho, who looked sadly at the clouds. Something's bothering him, Edward thought. Edward backed into the siding next to Jericho, and with a smile on his face. Hello again, Jericho. You look glum. Something the matter? Nothing you'd understand, old-timer. Now get the fuck away from me, he snapped and snorted off. I was only trying to help, said Edward. It's It's too late for that now, he growled. I swear I didn't mean to do it. Stop asking questions. Leave me alone. Suddenly a large crack of thunder snapped from the clouds above, and a large flash engulfed the harbor. Duck and cover! Jericho shouted. It's an air raid! Jericho! 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 He shouted, and he steamed out of the sheds into the rain, out of Edward's sight, leaving him much surprised. Edward was speechless. Later at the sheds, Edward talked about Jericho's behavior with Henry. And he shouted for everyone to duck and cover? Asked Henry. Yes. But before, he was acting like I was interrogating him. I think he might have served in the war. Or he's just a crazy asshole, said Gordon. Oh, shut it, Gordon, said Henry. I think Edward may be right. We all know how some of our mates came back from the war. They weren't themselves, not like how we used to know them. He probably came out of that war with a lot of baggage, said Edward. Edward's driver quickly ran up to his front buffers. Come on, old boy, we have an emergency at the harbor. Jericho has plunged into the bay. We're getting the breakdown train, said his driver. Edward jumped into action and quickly puffed to the harbor and found a set of broken buffers. As he looked over the edge of the dock, there was Jericho, half submerged in the seawater. The emergency crew got to work immediately, and soon enough, Jericho was back on the rails. Edward coupled up to him and helped him to the works. Jericho, what happened? Did your brakes fail? No. I wanted to be there, said Jericho. But why? Questioned Edward. Jericho let out a deep sigh before uttering, I didn't want to live anymore. Too much. Too many things. So many nightmares. I don't even sleep anymore. Edward didn't know what to say. Well, let's get you to the works, then maybe we can talk. Talking always helps. Jericho didn't say anything, but gave Edward a knowing look. Edward backed Jericho into the work sheds, and Edwards pulled in alongside of him. He wanted to stay a little bit later and possibly try to understand Jericho. The story that Jericho told was unlike anything that Edward has ever heard before. He said, my name's not really Jericho. Then again, I don't exactly remember my actual name. Jericho said. Why were you called Jericho? Asked Edward. I was in charge of operating an anti-aircraft cannon railcar. I couldn't tell you how many planes I've shot down. But the Third Reich had these Stuka fighter planes that had a special siren in the nose. It would make an unnerving whistle sound as it dived into an attack. The Germans called these Jericho sirens. I was stationed at the front, trying to prevent any attacks on our bases. And all I would hear in my head was, Jericho, 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 echoing. And then the sirens would sound and I opened fire. I had no idea what I was doing. Just unbeknownst to myself, Jericho is all I would say. Just looking at the sky behind this massive gun. Some guards thought it was funny, thinking I went loony. They started calling me Jericho and it just stuck. I was on heightened alert for 23 hours a day, waiting for these Jericho sirens to ring out. One day, we were attacked by a whole squadron of Messerschmitts and Stukas. We fought bravely, but my cannon was destroyed by a Stuka's machine gun, and I was thrown from the tracks. German U-boats came up onto the shore, and destroyers came into the bay. They captured my driver and firemen and executed them right in front of me, before turning their attention to me. They questioned me about how much heavy-duty firearms we had in our bases. I never said a word, but they burned me with a flamethrower, trying to encourage me to talk. Still, I gave them no information. In the meantime, backup arrived, our boys pushed forwards and began to push the Germans back. The Germans retreated and I was rescued. He later honorably discharged me by reason of mental distress. Jericho finished, leaving Edward quite astonished. Well, I think a little piece of us all got left behind in those dark times, stated Edward. But you, Jericho, you have so much left to live for in there, said Edward. You're a hard worker, I can tell. I think you just need somebody to talk to. And if you ever do, I'm here for you. And I'm sure my friends would be willing to help. Thank you, Edward, said Jericho. I think you're the first engine I've ever talked about this to. For the first time, I actually feel exhausted. I think I'm going to try and get some sleep. I'll leave you to it then, said Edward. Good night, old boy. As he puffed away heading home to Tidmouth Sheds, he looked back at Jericho, who smiled for the first time since he got on the island. Edward returned to the sheds to find all the engines still awake and chatting it up about Jericho. Edward didn't like what he was hearing from them. That's enough, he shouted. All of you need to knock it off. You want the truth? Then listen to me. We don't need rumors to fly around about our new friend. They all went quiet and turned their attention to Edward and listened, as Edward explained what Jericho had told him to the other engines. All the engines felt ashamed of themselves. Guilt dripped from their faces. Over the next few weeks, the engines all helped Jericho become adjusted to the railway. His brute strength was very valuable for heavy goods, and needless to say, the Fat Controller was impressed and expressed interest in keeping Jericho as a new member of his team. And he did. Jericho had become a permanent resident of the island of Sodor, and the engines were very welcoming towards him. And for the first time since he arrived, he actually smiled. Months had gone by. The new station was completed at the harbor. The engines all celebrated their hard work and gave special thanks to Jericho for his service and his contributions towards this project. And they welcomed him as a new friend.